Welcome to CarePod, a safe place to educate, inspire, and renew the caregiver. Listen in with our host, Dr. Kiplee Bell, as she interviews different experts along the caregiving journey.
So I am here with Fred Patak, who I just joked with offline that I don't know how he came into my stratosphere, but I'm very happy that he did. And just a beautiful full life. And wanted to bring him here to illustrate that we are leaders, we're thought leaders, doing all the things, and we're also caregivers. And sometimes that caregiver role guides us and provides us life lessons that are priceless. So I'd like to introduce you all and welcome you. Thank you so much, Fred, to the CarePod, our international audience for all things caregiving. So welcome.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. I've seen some of the previous guests that you've had, and I know that I'm in wonderful company. You have such a great environment to you, and, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. So, fun fact, Fred has been a ballroom dancer, but I don't even like the has been. Like once you're in that craft, it's like once you are, right? So
Absolutely.
help me to live vicariously through you because I love that,
Well,
Uh,
it's a funny story that actually ties right back into the caregiving journey. My grandparents were always ones to jump up on the dance floor, and it was kind of a funny little, tidbit in the family that my grandfather was so dedicated to my grandmother that he made sure that he learned how to dance, so that if she ever wanted to, he would always be available to dance. And I wound up going through a theater background in education, and that led me to ballroom dancing and performing as well as teaching. And that just allowed me to explore a lot of things, but really opened up my eyes to how movement is so important in life in
mm,
general. And it's funny how those dance moves and some of those postures and some of that, that body control actually really helped me in the caregiving journey, even in kind of navigating picking up out of hospital beds and putting into wheelchairs and all these things. And it's
wow.
it's such a it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful, I even call it a beautiful dance in the reality of making sure that you're not falling over in the process of trying to help somebody else. So, I still reference when I moved my grandmother from, a sitting position, in a couch or on a couch to the wheelchair. I say, okay, I kind of pick her up and say, okay, well, we have to dance a little bit to get to the next station. And she gives a little giggle, and she definitely understands, it's a little bit of footwork and a little bit of navigating, and we get to where we need to be.
I love that. I love that. So what was her favorite dance or her genre or because I think what's so intriguing about ballroom dance is the integration of culture and beautiful music across, different genres. So what was her favorite?
Well, it's funny because I know that they love to go out dancing in general, and those ballroom, the smooth dances of the foxtrots and the waltzes. My grandfather had some German heritage, so he always loved a good waltz. But there's certainly those elements of Latin dancing, the rumbas and some of those little salsas that they could navigate themselves through without getting too tripped up. It was always such a beautiful experience before my grandfather wound up declining and ending up in a wheelchair himself. He was always game for whatever there was. He was up and running with it. I do have to say, I would always crack up because they were very into polka for some reason. I guess that was their generation, and obviously a very lively dance would come about. So it was always
Love
fun to
it.
watch them polka.
Love it. So Fred in his bio talks about caregiver self-neglect and his journey now as a life coach in nutrition, weight loss management, so forth. So first tell us, how did you get to become, right? To adopt this role of caregiver. Sometimes that's imposed onto us, but how did you kind of walk into this role of as caregiver? And then identify this kind of sub niche as, you know what? We all need to honor ourselves along this journey.
Yeah, I mean, the start of everything was, I think, very similar to a lot of other people's journeys with caregiving, where it is almost thrust upon you because there's maybe a decline that seems to creep in over time, but generally we don't think of ourselves as full-time caregivers until we're already in it. And a lot of times I make mention of being very similar to that frog in boiling water aspect of you kind of creep into it, helping out a little bit more and more. And then as the needs increase, you notice that your attention to them needs to also increase. And so I had a life kind of set up in a different part of New Jersey. I wasn't too far away from her, but after my grandfather passed, she needed some help around the house, a few little things here and there, also to keep her company and keep her spirits up. And that was the first time in her life that she had ever been alone. So
Wow.
we wanted to make sure that, yeah, she wasn't being left alone. And so I decided to kind of pick up shop. Luckily, she was right outside of New York City. And so I moved into basically there was an apartment attached to the house that had been used by multiple members of the family that were working in New York City, but living in New Jersey. As anyone who's from the area understands, sometimes
Understands
you
it.
work in
Yeah.
New York, but you live just outside the city.
Yeah.
And so I had used that, and then I was working in New York City, taking the bus and the public transportation, doing a lot of things that I had really wanted to do for a long time in the city. And here again, as her needs kind of increased, I noticed myself getting pulled more and more to being localized. And if you know anything about New York City, as much as it might be close in proximity, you don't jump in and out of New York. So that wound up finding me doing a lot of work in New Jersey. And little by little, I wound up being very home based. And she wound up having a little bit of a car accident visiting her sister one time. So then she stopped driving, and then she had some heart problems, so she had some heart surgery, and, little by little, it just kind of
Progress.
grew to what it turned into.
So, what's been your greatest lesson? Um, Fred has spoken about how the care of his grandmother has illuminated his life, has guided his path now, and I found that to be something that resonates with me very deeply as I care for my own mother, and that care guides my life. So I get that. What are your greatest lessons? Would you say?
I would definitely say, my grandmother was in the cadet nurse corps. She was a retired nurse, and the element of making sure that you're taking care of yourself in order to better take care of the ones around you. In her dynamic, it was in the hospital. When she retired, she was taking care of veterans, and she loved doing that. But she also always acknowledged that it did come with a lot of times burnout. And I didn't even realize that with myself until I got to a certain point and actually wound up collapsing and ending up in the
Wow.
hospital. And it was kind of that wake up call that sometimes we need. And thank goodness I was able to pull out of that. But it really wakes you up to the fact that their life is dependent on yours. So as much as we want to have
Mm,
that giving, giving, giving nature, if we don't fill up our own cup and then all of a sudden something happens to us, then everybody's out of luck. So that caregiver self-neglect has become such a passion of mine. And it goes all the way down to the fact that if you're not nourishing your body the way that you need versus maybe the way they need. I made that mistake myself. I was a lot of times doing what, parents do, where I was just kind of eating her leftovers, and
mm.
her nutritional needs were different than mine. And so I started down that rabbit hole, became a certified nutritionist, and I kind of woke up to the fact that we can still take care of each other in that way. And I always like to say it's not I take care of myself or her, it's that I take care of her and me, or vice versa.
So
And
important. Yeah.
it's because you are their lifeline in a lot of ways. So, we always hear that, the very commonplace, put your own mask on first. And it's absolutely true. And it comes so much beyond that we don't always appreciate how much they are depending on us. And even down to our mood, our emotions and our thoughts have a reflection on them. So we have to show up for them. And if we don't show up for them, then, they're not going to thrive the way that they could be at the twilight of their life.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Impactful Caregiving, where we believe that compassionate care begins with education and empowerment. Impactful care is more than just a CME accredited online course instruction. It's a philosophy, a commitment to equipping clinicians at the bedside with the knowledge and skills to provide the best care for the older adult person. We believe that when clinicians are educated, they become empowered to not only care for the patients they serve, but also to partner with and empower their colleagues and patient families. Impactful caregiving recognizes that behind every patient is a grandparent, a spouse, a loved one, a person who means the world to their own family. Through our one-on-one consultations, Impactful Caregiving empowers the layman caregiver and their family to begin important conversations and plan for their aging chapter. Our commitment doesn't end there. We also serve corporate clients who seek customized medical training for their staff, as well as consultations for aging accommodation and staff education in various sectors of business, travel, and hospitality. Whether you're a clinician caregiver dedicated to improving patient outcomes or a corporate client striving to provide exceptional care experiences, we invite you to partner with us. Together, let's make an impact in the lives of older adults and their families. We can redefine what age looks like as impactful caregivers.
Absolutely. So what does showing for Fred Patak look like?
So I really loved the aspect of morning routines and making sure, and I actually am developing these programs actually around the concept of morning care. Coming here again off of my grandmother being a nurse and always making those rounds and doing the morning care routine of all the patients. But there was one aspect that you never really think about is that that person had to show up to work clean and organized themselves. They didn't just
Presentable,
show up
right?
in their pajamas. So the first morning care routine that any nurse would ever do would be the one on on themselves. So I really adopted that philosophy and appreciating that as much as we do for them, we have to make sure that we set ourselves up so that we can show up better. And and she used to tell me stories about how no matter what the circumstances of her life were, when she crossed the threshold of that door, she had to show up for her job and she had to show up for that person in the way they needed them. So needed her. So it's so important to make sure that we're keeping ourselves accountable in
And that
in love
self-care.
and respect of ourself as well. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I make sure, I don't always succeed, but I try to get, the sleep that I need. And, sometimes that's a challenge in itself with caregiving. There's always bed alarms and call buttons and things going off. So, that and then making sure that we're nourishing our bodies and our mind and our souls the way that we need to, even down to taking a moment of reflection and just being grateful for all the things that we have. We don't want to sink into the negative energies of what we're missing out on life or the things that we don't have, but rather just being grateful for what we do have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So important. So do you still get your dance on every once in a while?
I luckily I have a wonderful girlfriend that I do like to dance with. We don't get a chance to go out as often as we would like to, but it's once it's a part of you, I don't think you ever
Yeah.
lose it.
No.
Even my grandparents, they weren't quite in the condition to jump up on the dance floor, but you could always see those feet tapping, and they always still had it, still had it in their body.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what's life now? So, CarePod's an international audience. What if there is a client out there that says, I'd really love to get with him on a nutritional life coach type, path. Tell us all the things, your websites, any offerings you might have, etc.
So yeah, no, there's actually a few different versions of what I've been working on, mostly to just support caregivers in that respect, in nutrition and self care. making sure that they're lining themselves up for success in what they, understanding that everyone's journey is different. So I'm on all the social media channels, the Facebooks. I dive into a lot of those groups, and Instagram, just at Fred Patak is where you'll find me. I'm sure you'll be able to put it into some sort of show notes. And then you can certainly find me at fredpatak.com. And I'm actually linking a few other domains to different things that are going to be kind of upcoming projects that are still in the works. But I am taking one-on-one clients currently, but I'm really developing more of group atmosphere programs because I think the sense of community is so important in the caregiving world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Isolation is a huge component of burnout, and I focus mostly on how, burnout affects us, not only us, but everyone around us, including our loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that they can feel that burden, or feel as if they're a burden because of our negative energy that we're bringing to the
Absolutely,
space.
absolutely,
Absolutely.
and we raise each other up. I mean, the rising tide raise all ships,
All ships,
and
all
and
ships.
it's so important that we remember that we're not alone. That even though everybody's path and everybody's journey is a little bit different, and their circumstances may be different, it's not a competition about who has it better or worse. It's about the fact that we're all in this together, and we are all humans, and we are all here to love and to serve each other.
Absolutely. So give me your last 5 tips, your 5 tips to guard against caregiver self-neglect.
Okay, let's see. I have basically a stress framework. So that's technically what, six. So
Okay.
the six things that you need to watch out for to avoid stress or to manage while you're trying to get out of stress and burnout. One would be certainly sleep disturbances. There's the time constraints that we want to make sure that we're managing our time effectively and efficiently. Relationships, not only with ourselves, but also our loved ones. We have the emotional strains and making sure that you are housing your emotions effectively so that you're not affecting the negative aspects around you or allowing the negative aspects around you or internally to affect other things. This being social and making sure that you're not isolated. And then the final one was physical complaints or somatic complaints is for the sake of an S, we
Yeah,
call
that's a
it S.
big one.
So, and, there's a lot of physical aspects of caregiving and making sure that you are taking care of yourself physically, because I didn't even realize until it was too late that I started affecting my back in that negative kind of hunching over the bed, and especially in how you're picking your loved ones up sometimes can really affect you. So keeping your pains, your physical pains at bay by making sure you're keeping your physicality and your physiology as strong as possible.
Nice, nice. Well, I am honored. I'm so glad we connected. Hope to collaborate with you on larger opportunities in the future as well. And, just to illustrate that we have full lives, we are the legacy of those that have come before us. And so we're kind of walking out the purpose of our parents, our grandparents, but we are humans ourselves. So I thank you so much for sitting with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Great information right from the source. For more information on how to caregive like a boss, check out impactfulcaregiving.com. Want to be a guest on the show? Contact us at CarePod at impactfulcaregiving.com.